Okay, kindly lead the prayer, Barrera.
Let us pray. In the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Our loving and generous God, we praise and thank you for the beautiful blessings you have given us. Thank you for giving us a mind that can know, a heart that can love. Thank you for giving us the chance to continue learning amidst the pandemic that had caused a lot of changes in our lives. Hello, ma'am. Tapos mo. Na,
Nawala, badi.
bahala mo.
Wala jud.
Lilith Goro si ma'am.
Saan mo nag-oral na to la?
Wala
Kaya ra
prayer.
na, Eron.
Na-out ko sa usa. Na-out ko sa usa. Nawala ko nito.
Padayon day murag oral.
Oo, padayon yun. Akong kuhan, natunan kay part 1 na ba yun? Di pangilantad, may tanan. Bad, Barrera, Jeffrey.
Good, buddy.
Taga-tanay ka? Taga-tanay ka
Oo.
ba? Manifest?
Oo. Oo, manipis.
Ikaw sa mo, kailangan, ikaw sa mo sa Eros.
Tyros, ayaw, di mo ako kailangan na buddy. Ito lagi ng suludlo na pugayo dito sa manipis yun.
Oo, dito, silang kuhan, silang Maika. Kailan ka?
May kasaykon.
Ah,
Classmate mo na ako sa una.
taga-tanay, ang beta siya.
Oo.
Si Kuhan, si Sean.
Wala buddy.
Sean Seto. Lalayo, raday ka dito sila, no?
Oo.
Ready na untas. Barira mo pray.
Out I guess ka mo.
Ay, baita, maka-answer sa tanang ko.
Katuon po ka buddy?
Nakatulog ko, part 1 ra, kay pangilantan, may tanang diri sa balay.
Na. Mahor tayo po katuon.
Bit
Duha ra bitaw ka question pa de.
Luar bito pero
Kulba.
kulba po.
Kaya ra na.
Jotay ra bitaw ta.
How
Oo.
does how?
Ay ara kung kaolaw.
Right. Kaya rin. Mo lagi dito siya.
Sayod din sa
Laban tayo mga badi.
Laban.
Aligra sa pachamba-chamba.
Kita maka-answer tayo. Two sets of question pero ba yung grabe na?
Wa naman nabalik si ma'am.
Pwede chat sa GC, basa may chat to. Okay, check na ako.
Hello, good morning. I'm
Hey
sorry.
ma'am,
I was even talking about it ako sa makangwa na makagabasa. Dayo,
Nawala.
nawala di among connection. Sorry.
Nitapot ma'am.
Nawala among connection. Karon pa ni balik. Saon ba ni? This is the reason why. Sadya ang virtual. All right, let us proceed. Okay. So may I request everybody to please make sure to open your camera the whole duration, okay, of our discussion. So for today, we'll need to discuss about, wait sa, a little, wait sa ha, ano nang ipakapin, okay. So for today, we'll need to discuss about module, wala lagi. Okay. Midterm module. Midterm module 2. So we'll need to talk about the difference between crime, scene, and morality, of course. Okay. So let us first discuss kung unsa ang crime. So based on the definition provided, when you say crime, it is an act or omission against the penal law of the country. While when you say sin, it refers to an act or omission against the divine law. So let us first discuss this phrase by phrase. So there are two types of crime. Okay, there are two ways to commit crime. It could be in a form of an act, it could be in a form of omission. So unsa may difference between the two? Okay. Slideshow. Okay. Okay. What's the difference between the two? So according to our revised penal code, a felony, okay, which is the specific term of a crime, okay, that is in violation of our revised penal code. So a felony is defined under the code as an act or omission that is punishable by law, committed through by means of culpa or dulo. The words punishable by law means the act or the omission must be defined and punished by the revised penal code and other law of the land. Yan ang giingon dari other law of the land. Because there are different sources of our penal laws, okay, or criminal law. Ang imuhang revised penal code is one of the main source lang of our penal laws of the land. So it mentioned here under felony na ang act can be ang crime itself or ang felony itself can be considered as a culpa and dulo. So what's the difference between the two? When you say dulo, which is a Spanish term, it means deceit, meaning to say you perform a felony with intent or with deceit. So there is deceit when an act is performed with deliberate intent. Like for example, na kay Ripon, question, is rape a type of crime nga wala nimo giplanuhan? Of course, it is a type of crime nga imuhang giplanuhan. Another example, murder. It is a type of felony wherein there is evident premeditation. Okay, mo nang giingon nag deliberate intent, imong giplanuhan, imong gituyo, there is deceit. Okay. While when you say culpa, which is another Spanish term, it means fault. So as you can see, dako kay diferensya o kay difference ang dulo and ang culpa. Because dulo is performed with deceit and it is performed intently. While your culpa, there is no deceit, there is no intent to commit a crime because the crime is caused by fault, negligence, imprudence, and lack of foresight. I will give you a very good example. Okay? I will give you a very good example. You're driving your car, okay? Your Raptor, okay? Brand new Raptor, and the rain is pouring very hard. Then pagkahumanaan ni kalit og labang. Oh. Di mo da pagkahuman si Barrera will even claim nga wala na ako nagituyo. Yes, that is correct. Wala nimo gituyo ang imuhang pagbangga sa bata nga nilabang. But then again, you need to remember that felony, okay, or crime can be committed with deceit, okay, and can also be committed by culpa. So that is the reason why every time there is a traffic accident, from the word itself, accident, mo pasabot wa gituyo. Accident gani, na accident nga gituyo. So it's always caused by negligence or probably lack of foresight. So mo nang kung naamoy maligsan, do wala nimo gituyo. Do ang paglabang is ang reason ngano na banggaan siya, na hit siya by a car or a motorcycle is due to the negligence of the person nga ni labang kay wala ni agi sa pedestrian lane, ni kalitrag dalagan. Still, you do have a liability. And you need to remember nga it does not mean that if you will shoulder the medical expenses of the victim of the traffic accident, it does not mean that you are exonerated by your criminal liability. No. Dilibot pasabot kung mubayad ka sa medical expenses, automatic wa kay criminal liability. There is still a criminal liability. But then again, in terms with the Filipino customs, basta dili ra kabiyaan sa driver, okay? Dili ra kabiyaan sa driver, yatot kag ospital, and then all medical expenses are shouldered by the driver, okay? So, ato ang Filipino culture, automatic, we do not file a case. But then again, if you will look at the law, payment of the medical expenses, wala bud pasabot nga wala kay liability, naaragyapon. It's just that the victim or the family of the victim does not want to file due to humanitarian reason. Okay? Another thing, it was mentioned earlier that the act, okay, the crime could be, again, crime could be committed by an act or it could either be committed by an omission. So what are examples of a crime that can be considered as an act? Okay. Crimes like, crimes like robbery, okay? This one. Okay? Crimes like robbery, okay? Crimes like murder, rape, physical injury, direct assault, these are all examples of a crime that is committed by an act. But when you say omission, it is totally a different thing. Kaya when you say crime by an omission, it is the failure of an individual to perform a certain act where he or she is bound to do so. A very good example for this is, akong i-erase niya. A very good example for this is tax evasion. A very good example for this is tax evasion. Remember that the primary duty of the Filipino people to our government is to make sure that we pay our taxes correctly. Okay. Because of the train law, ang nahitabo is that only people or workers who are earning 20,000 and up per month. Okay, again, because of the train law, only those individuals who are earning 20,000 and above per month are obliged by the government to pay their taxes. So if your salary is below 20,000, wala gyud kay tax deduction. Unlike before, unlike unlike before nga, even if your salary is only 8,000, 9,000, 7,000, na you need to pay tax ra gyapon. But as of now, wala na due to the train law itself. Okay. What are examples of nature of job wherein you will need to pay your tax? Example, artista ka. If you're an artista, meaning to say you're earning more than 20,000 every month. If you're a police officer, member of the Tribunal, member of the PDEA, member of the Coast Guard. If you're the, what's this, a teacher, a public teacher, your salary is more than 20,000. So, meaning to say, you are obliged to pay your obligation to the government, which is payment of taxes. Why is it I've typed here tax evasion? Tax evasion means non-payment of your obligation. So, tax evasion is using illegal means in order to avoid taxes. Okay? Typically, your tax evasion scheme involved individual or it could be a corporation misrepresenting their income to the internal revenue. Or in the Philippines, Bureau of Internal Revenue. So like for example, what if your tax in a year is 2 million? Subot pasabot, in order to avoid prosecution, kinahanglan that you will need to pay 2 million. Dilibot pasabot if your tax obligation is 2 million and you will pay 1.5, 1.2, but pasabot okay na siya. No. Payment of taxes meaning to say full payment of the entire tax obligation. So if you will just pay 1/4 of the amount, 1/5 of the amount, 1/8 of the amount, 1/2 of the amount, or 3/4 of the amount that's supposed to be paid, you are still committing tax evasion. Do you get my point? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Another good example aside from tax evasion is kaning mga police officers. Remember that lahi ang nature sa imong trabaho if you are a member of the Tribunal. Again, what are the triburos again, Urakoy? Basig na nga limot. Urakoy, what are the different triburos again? Urakoy. How about you, Barrera? What are the different triburos in the government?
Limot ko mo.
Aaron, Canilio.
Galag akong cellphone, ma'am.
Okay. How about you, Aaron? What are the triburos of the government?
Kabalo, ma'am.
Pastila ni mga bataan ni. When you say triburo, it refers to your PNP, BJMP, and your BFP. The reason why it is considered as triburo because these three major organizations of the government was created under Republic Act 6975. So ano kaniya ito ang gihimong example under crime by omission? Because if you are a police officer, your job is not only 8 hours. Your job is not only 12 hours, but you are asked to perform your job 24/7. 24 hours in 1 week. Munang, for example, naka-off ka. Pagkahuman kita ka dito nga naay na gisnatchan, dili buot pasabot that abi it's already your off, you are no longer obliged to perform your duties vested on you as a police officer. Even if naka-off duty ka, as long as you see some emergencies or untoward incident, automatic you need to respond. Kay, ani ha, asa man ang omission ana? Ang omission ana is failure to perform your duty as a police officer. May nga po ka, ma'am. But then again, off duty man ako, as what I have mentioned, the nature of job of the PNP, BJMP, PDEA, so on and so forth, they are totally different to the usual trabaho. Like teacher, ang trabaho sa teacher, kuan raman, mag-discuss siya, it's only good for kuan, the scheduled class hours. Kung kuan po ka, traffic officer po ka, ang imong trabaho is panahon ra po sa imuhang duty. But if you are a member of the Tri-Bureau and other similar law enforcement organization, your job is 24/7. So just for in case na yung untoward incident na hold up, and then you will not respond, there is already an omission on your part. Failure on your part to respond. Failure on your part to perform what is required for you to do so. So, ma'am, posible ba may makasuhan na? Yes, of course, pwede kayong makasuhan. Okay? As long as na ay makailan ninyo ug ma-identify nga kamuto niya, wala mo respond. Okay? So that's the difference between crime as an act and crime as an omission. Okay? Questions, clarifications? Do you have? Do you have? Okay, sige, wala. It was mentioned earlier by our module, by our module 2, midterm module number 2, that crime itself is against our penal law. So you need to remember that there are different sources of our criminal law. As what I have mentioned, number 1, makita ra ninyo if dili ra nako i-screen share. Ay, asa na? I-slide?
Kita ra, ma'am.
Okay. So as what I had mentioned earlier, nga, ang crime itself is against our criminal law. But you need to remember that our criminal law is a branch of law which defines crime, treats of their nature, and provides for their punishment. So there are different sources of our criminal law. So number 1 source of criminal law or penal law, it is your revised penal code. Your revised penal code is consists of Book 1 and your Book 2. Okay. Ma'am, unsay kalainan between the Book 1 and the Book 2? Kani? Okay. Your revised penal code, Book 1, okay, focused on defining the concept of felony. Like ato itong giiskot kanina, that felony itself is preliminary. We've even discussed earlier that a felony itself could be committed in a form of dulo or it could be in a form of culpa. But then again, your revised penal code does not only talk about the difference between a dulo and a culpa. It also provides the different circumstances. So one good example of a circumstance is your justifying circumstance. Okay? Another circumstance is your exempting circumstance, naa po kay mitigating circumstance, o naa po kay aggravating circumstances. Let's focus more on the exempting circumstance. Diba, we have discussed about the neoclassical. Diba? So, the concept of the neoclassical serve as basis for the creation of the exempting circumstance. Your exempting circumstance of the revised penal code tackles on the concept of there is a crime but there is no criminal. There is a crime but there is no criminal. Ganong ingon ani ang concept sa exempting circumstance? Because the perpetrator of the crime could either be mentally ill, mentally retarded, or probably the perpetrator of the crime is a child. If you will look at the comprehensive saan? Okay. If we will look at RA 9344, or also known as the Comprehensive Juvenile Justice and Welfare System in the Philippines, nagisgot diri specifically in section 15, if I'm not mistaken, in terms with acquiring criminal liability. Asa to ron? Wait. Wrong. It's section 68. Okay. So, unsa giingon sa section 6 na to? Ang section 6 na to of RA 9344 mentioned about the minimum age of criminal liability. Meaning to say, unsay pinaka mubo nga edad sa usa ka bata who is considered as child in conflict with the law nga maka-acquire of criminal liability. So it is clearly stipulated here that a child who is 15 years of
10
age,
years old.
15 years of age or under at the time of the commission shall be exempt from criminal liability. Unsay buot pasabot? Hanang mo fall sa exempting circumstance ang usa ka bata if it so happen that the age of the child is 14 years old and below during the commission of crime. So mo nang musulod ang exempting circumstance. That there is a crime but there is no criminal. Nga naman, because of the statutory age of the child which happened to be 14 years old and below. However, in order for a child to acquire criminal liability, kinahanglan iyang edad is 15 years old and above and should be below 18. Anong below 18? Kay under our Philippine Constitution, 18 is already considered as the age of maturity. 18 is already recognized by the Philippine Constitution as a mature age wherein you are already allowed to work, already allowed to enter a contract. So, kung ang imong edad again is 15 years old, exactly 15, but below 18, during the commission of crime, there is a possibility that you will acquire criminal liability. Huwingon na pod mo, ma'am, ganong there is a possibility. Ganong possibility ra? Because it does not mean that if the age of the child is above 15, but below 18, dili automatic that the child will acquire criminal liability. Ma'am, ganun dili automatic na maka-acquire ang bata of criminal liability? Because there is a need on the part of the officer assigned in the women's desk to establish the discernment of the child. When napod mo, ma'am, unsa lang discernment? Discernment is where a person or a child knows the nature of his or her action. Or simply, according to the dictionary, the ability to judge well. Meaning to say, this discernment means able to distinguish the difference between right and wrong. So ma'am, what if the child is above 15, 16 years old, pero did not acted with discernment, naabay criminal liability, ma'am? Of course, the answer is walay criminal liability. Why? Because the child did not act with discernment. On the different note, if the child happens to be exactly 15, who acted with discernment, kabalo siya sa nature sa iyang job. That's a nature sa iyahang gibuhat, that it is wrong. So the child will automatically acquire a criminal liability. But you need to remember, here in the Philippines, we do have two types of justice system. We do have the PCJS, which is commonly regarded as the adult justice system, and for the child in conflict with the law. When you say child in conflict with the law, this refers to my definition. When you say child in conflict with the law, this refers to a child who is alleged as, say alleged, meaning to say, gipasanginlan, being accused, or probably a judge. What do you mean by a judge? Found guilty na of committing a crime against, or an offense rather, against, an offense against the special laws, or a felony against our revised penal code or any other domestic laws of our country. So munang matawag siya nga child in conflict with the law. So as what I have mentioned, na two types of justice system. Adult justice system o natay juvenile justice system. Sa ngalan palamang daan, lahi jud siya. So therefore, the process is also lahi. Remember, in the Philippine criminal justice system, particularly in the judiciary, okay, the third pillar of the PCJS, the moment that your guilt is proven, the moment that your guilt established, that you are proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt, okay, a lapse of 15 days gikan sa pag-promulgate sa judgment. What do you mean by promulgate? Paghatag sa judgment. The judgment itself becomes final and executory. When you say final and executory, it means that you will really need to serve your sentence. Asan ako i-serve ba? Sa prisuhan? Of course. But if we talk on juvenile justice system, it's totally different. Ganun different man siya. Simply because the moment that the court finds the child in conflict with the law guilty of the said accusation, okay, and judgment is given nga guilty siya, it is not similar with the adult justice system. Nga a lapse of 15 days, automatic, the case itself becomes final and executory. But when it terms with the child in conflict with the law, after giving judgment, bisan mula pa na og 15 days gikan sa pag-promulgate sa judgment, that child will not serve the sentence. Kaya gano man, because of the age of the child, which is below 18, ang buhaton sa court is automatic suspension of the execution of sentence. So, kung i-suspend ang pag-execute sa iyang sentence, that child itself, the child in conflict with the law, okay, its custody is given to the DSWD. What's the job of our DSWD? Their job is to make sure that the child will be reformed. So just for in case that the child is reformed, the DSWD will provide a recommendation to the court who tried and decide the case that the child has been reformed. So kung naka-reform siya mo yung recommendation, then it is as if the child did not commit a crime at all. So wala siya i-serve na sentence. Do you get my point? So, the records of the child, hangtod matigulang siya, hangtod mo 50 anyo siya, it will never be used against him because it will remain confidential. On the other hand, what if the child is not rehabilitated? Wala na usob, wala yung gyapon. Same procedure. The DSWD will need to make a recommendation and send it to the court, submit it to the court. It's nga court, katong ni hear and try and ni decide sa case. So since the child was not rehabilitated, okay, ang mahitabo, there is a need, okay, to serve the sentence. Kaya gisuspend raman to. Kaya kaya mo siya nausob, munang i-serve na siya. But then again, remember that the state, that the government, that the Philippines is the father of the child. And under RA 9344, ang ilahang obligation is always to make sure that the best interest of the child is given and should prevail at all times. So what happens? Dili siya isagol sa mga adult criminals. If the child is qualified for a probation, then the child will be released through probation. But then again, if the child is not is not qualified for probation, wanang ibutang jud sa workhouses. So as you can see, before and even after judgment, the best interest of the child ragyapon ang kinalantaw. Okay? So that is the reason why our Book 1 of the Revised Penal Code has the exempting circumstance. Kaya even if katong mga tao nga mentally ill and even they are mentally retarded, since they are not capable of weighing properly or calculating the difference between right and wrong, unang, they are not held criminally liable for their action. A very good example for that is what if imong balay, isunog og buang. Sample ra ha. So remember, from the word itself, buang, meaning to say, that person is not sound. That person cannot distinguish the difference between right and wrong. So sa may tabuan na, exempting ra gyapon. Na ay crime. It is recognized that there is a crime. But then again, walay criminal. So sa may mahitabuan na, since there is no criminal, then there is no criminal liability. So ang pwede rin mo ma-follow makuha as a form of justice is the civil liability of the buang. But then again, this is the catch. Ano na ay catch? Kay in terms with the civil liability, it depends on the capability of the family of the person who is said and proven to be insane. Kung naa ba sila capacity to pay, capacity to restore the damage. If yes, ay wala problema. Kaya ang nasunog na parte sa balay, ipaayo raman na. But the question is, what if the family of the insane individual is wala po'y kwarta? Kay lisod pud kaayo. So it means, nga dili ra Japon mahatag ang imuhang gipangayo nga civil liability on the part of the insane individual. Nagkasinabot ba ta? Hello, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Questions, clarifications? Oh my gosh, you're no longer listening. Sige. Okay, another is your book 2. Okay, so your book 2 this covers the different titles of the revised penal code. So, unsa man ning lain-lain klaseng title? Titles of the revised RPC. So, natay crime against person, crime against national security, crime against fundamental laws, crime against order, crime against public order, crime against opium, crime against public, crime against chastity, crime against person, so on and so forth. So, ang atuang RPC is composed of 20 titles. Ya kay title man siya, but pasabot, ang different felonies itself are demarcated according to their title. Example, crime of murder, crime of rape, crime of physical injury. These are examples of felonies, of crimes that is under the title of crime against person. You need to remember that our penal law itself or criminal law itself provides the following. It defines the crime, it treats of their nature, and provide the punishment. A very good example is that in the crime of murder, okay, for the crime of murder, under crime against person, gibutang diya kung unsa ang murder. Example, okay, so what are the elements of murder? The person was killed, that the accused killed him, that the killing was attended by any qualifying circumstance. So what pasabot, these are the different elements or definition of murder. But you need to remember the criminal law does not only define, it also treats of their nature. So lantawon diya kung what are the available circumstances. Mitigating ba siya? Qualifying ba siya? Aggravating ba siya? And aside from that, the most important thing is ginabutang diya ang iyahang punishment. So, reclusion perpetua. Gibutang diya ang reclusion perpetua. 20 years and 1 day to 40 years. So, it provides for their punishment. But then again, in the revised penal code, it does not only provide the criminal liability, but it also provides the civil liability. Kung pila iyang danyos, which are oftentimes mudako siya because of the additional damages filed by the victim. Aside from that, your criminal law also talks about the different stages of crime. Okay, so may different stages of crime. You do have your consummated. Okay? You do have your attempted, and you do have your frustrated. So what is the difference between the three? Okay, the three stages of crime. It's a So when you say consummated, buot pasabot that all of the elements are present. Like for example, giplanuhan nimong patyon si Juan. So imuhang gi-execute, nagkuha ka og pusil, or imo bang gidunggab, then napatay nimo, or napatay nimo si Juan. So buot pasabot, it is consummated. Okay. But when you say attempted, it means that it is a type of stage wherein you've executed, okay? You've executed the action. It's just that because of the intervention of the physician, for example, ang nahitabo is the person was saved. Example, balik ng Juan. Imo gidugmak si Juan. Daigo ang liver ni Juan. Pagkahuman imong gibiyaan pag human imong dugmak. Nya kay si Juan nakitaan mas mga tawo, so gidalag ospital. Ka 50-50 si Juan. Then pagkahuman because of Maria, who is an excellent surgeon, ang nahitabo na buhi si Juan. So the case itself is still murder. It's just that ang stage niya is no longer consummated, but rather frustrated. Okay, muna na kay gitawag nga frustrated murder. Another good example. But you need to remember nga for a crime to be frustrated, kinahanglan jud nga na-execute siya nimo, pero it's just that with the intervention of other people who are knowledgeable in their field, like the physician, ang naitabo is nabuhi. But if this is the case, gidugmak nimo si Juan, pero pag dugmak nimo ang naigo bukton. Pangutana ko, if ang bukton mo maigo, mamatay de ka na. Is bukton a fatal organ? Pagbutang ra nimo pagbutang ra nimo og pressure on the site where gistab ka sa bukton, automatic din magkamamatay-an na. So if that is the case, dili na siya matawag nga frustrated, but it is just attempted. But you need to remember, for a crime to be considered as frustrated, kinahanglan nga kanay mo gidunggab naigo jud sa fatal area. Kung imong gidunggab, ki-execute nimo pero wala naigo sa fatal area, that is not frustrated, that is only attempted. Muna kung madunggan ni in the news, madunggan nimo, Si Aiko, for example, gifilan og case of attempted murder, frustrated murder. Ana. Pero kung namatay gyud, dili na mo ingon nga consummated murder. No. It's just addressed as murder. Pero kung nadalag hospital niya, nabuhi ka 50-50, pero nabuhi ra, it becomes frustrated murder. Or, gistab nimo, pero wala na igo sa fatal area or fatal organ, it only becomes attempted murder. Nagkasinabot pa ta?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Oo.
ma'am.
Please ask questions in tahon kung naamoy nalibkan, kay para panahon sa sunod na tong oral, di mo magproblema. Okay? So, aside from your RPC, ay, kani. Muna siya yung recent amendment of your revised penal code, which is Republic Act number 10951. So, it talks on the act of adjusting the amount or value of the property and the damage on which the penalty is based and the fines imposed under the revised penal code as amended by for the purpose of Act number 3815. Remember that our Act number 3815, this is a very old law actually. Ang tawag ani sa una before the amendment, this was known as the Kodigo Penal. But then again, it was revised, munang gitawag siya Revised Penal Code. No, lantawan ng date It was signed in December 8, 1930. Imagine, unsa naman taron? 2021. Mo 2022 na lamang ta. So, Act 3815 is a very old law. Remember, in our previous discussion, we've emphasized that crime itself is dynamic. As long as the society is improving, nagka-modernize, okay, crime itself, ni-improve po siya. And in order to cope up with the advancement in the society, to cope up with the advancement in the crime commission, the only way is to improve our law. And since wala pa jud na usob ang atuang revised penal code into penal codes, which was the plan before, muna ang ginabuhat is gina-amend siya according to its article. One good example, as what I mentioned, is Republic Act 10951. Another good example for this, nga kanang gi-change para to cope up the advancement of crime commission is kanang crime of rape. Before, crime of rape is under crime against chastity. But then again, because of RA 8353, it was then transferred to crime against person. Anong nahimo naman siyang crime against person? Because of the amendment of Republic Act 8353. Because it was found out that the crime of rape can be committed by a man and a woman. It was also found out that a crime of rape can also be performed not just by inserting the private organ, okay, the private sexual organ of the male to the insertion of the vagina of the woman. Pero your rape can also be committed by inserting your finger to the vagina of the woman or the private organ of the woman. And aside from that, because of this amendment, your RA 8353 also mentioned that even the slightest touch of the finger or even the organ of the man, the private part of the man, even slightest touch of the labia, it is already considered as rape. Even magsulod ra ka og cellphone, gamitan ni mong cellphone, sabon, or any type of object inserted to the private organ of the woman, private area of the woman, it is then considered as rape. Nang ang rape karon is under crime against person, the title of the revised penal code, book 2. It is no longer under crime against chastity. Because of its amendment, di ba ganina guys ko that there are 3 stages of crime. Nakakagitawag nga consummated, frustrated, and attempted. But in terms of rape, duwara siya ka-stage. Una, consummated, na-rape yun. Okay? The second stage is attempted. So the frustrated is already removed from the crime of rape. Kaya imposible kuno ma-frustrate. Remember, giingon ba kanina, even the slightest touch of the finger or the organ of the lalaki to the labia of the woman or the lips of the vagina, it is already considered as rape. So, muna duwara ka stages. Consummated, and the other one is attempted. Ko, ma'am, ano sa pa na ito makonsider nga gi-attempt? Giabdak ang babae, kay repon niya. Pagkaman, ni kalit magdaay ni abot, ni dalagan siya, wala na dayon ang rape. That is just an attempted rape. So, wala'y frustrated rape, ha? Wala. Another source of our, what's this? Another source of our penal law are our special laws. Example of a special law is your Republic Act 10591, which focus on the Comprehensive Firearm Ammunition Regulation Act. Remember, there is a big difference between felony and offense. Because when you say felony, it is an act or omission that is against the revised penal code. But when you say offense, it is still an act and omission, but then it is committed against the special law. I will repeat myself. When you say offense, it is an act or omission committed and punishable by the special laws. But when you say felony, it is an act or an omission committed against the revised penal code. I hope we are clear with that. And I hope you are still listening. So again, crime itself is again the penal law of the country, while sin, it is against the divine law. When you say divine law, against the Bible, against the Quran if you are a Muslim, or whatever religion that you do have. You need to remember, since lain-lain ang iyahang concept between a crime and a sin. Therefore, when you say criminal act, okay, the penalty is imposed during the lifetime of a person or a term of imprisonment. Okay? While your sin, this is imposed after mamatay ka. Okay? Matut pa, there are 3 levels kuno after mamatay ka. You do have the hell, the purgatory, and heaven. Kaya guys, got matagsin. So therefore, you will go to hell. And that is eternal. And that is forever. Okay? Unlike with your crime, after servitude of the sentence, kung ba nakag-serve sa imong sentence, automatic you'll be given a certificate of final release. And your rights are already restored by then. Another crime is committed against the law of the state. Pero when you say immorality, okay, act that is against morality, okay, these immorality are actions that is against the unwritten norms of the society. Both pasabot sa Binisaya pa, immorality is against sa kinatuhuan, sa Bisayaan, tinuhuan sa katigulang. That is immorality. Crime itself is fixed by statute. That is true. But your immorality, it is not fixed by statute. Because laws are written or coded, but immorality are unwritten norms of the society. And always remember that the concept of morality varies from one place to another. A very good example for this is the way we deal with death. Here in Negros Oriental, as what I have mentioned in our previous discussion, here in Negros Oriental, kung mabatyan atong silingan, kinahanglan, we need to respect by not doing a video, okay? Kung magpasunata mahinay nga dili mabut sa namatyan. In respect. Okay? But in other places like in Manila, kung naay mamatyan, sadya kayo sila. Why? Kukuha pa guys sila og mga comedian. So as you can see, the concept of normality and whether the normality or acceptability or non-acceptability of the action depends on the community itself. And it is not it is not the same with other places. Another, your crime itself is nationalistic, meaning to say, if it is based on statehood, therefore it is only applicable within the Philippine territory. Again, it is only applicable within the Philippine territory. But you need to remember, nga na po instances, even if a crime is committed outside the Philippine territory, outside the Philippine jurisdiction, there are instances that the case itself is prosecuted primarily here in the Philippines. A very good example for this is the concept of extraterritoriality. Example, kanang airplane. Kung ang airplane is registered here in the Philippines, bisan pag-asa pa na siya nga jurisdiction of certain countries, whenever crimes are committed, automatic, labi na if it involves Filipino, automatic and ay primary jurisdiction to conduct an investigation and prosecute the crimes committed inside the aircraft, example an airplane, which is registered here in the Philippines. Our Philippine laws applies. Okay? While when you say immorality, it is regionalistic. As what I had mentioned earlier, the concept of acceptability or non-acceptability of certain actions depends on the place itself. Kahit times that this action is okay, based sa tinubuan sa katigulangan, naapoy times nga this action is not acceptable kay lahipot ang tinubuan sa katigulangan. A minute lang. Hello? 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 Yes? Kinsa ni palihog? Yes, ma'am. How can I help you? Questions, clarifications? I'm sorry. Questions, clarifications, do you have?
None so far, ma'am.
Palagi na lang none so far, ha?
Ma'am.
Sige na. Sige na, you ask question before we leave. Sige na. Okay.
Ma'am, kaya niyo mo nag-record, ma'am?
Recorded.
Okay. So, malantaw na siya, ma'am. Kaya nai-uban, wala na ako na, ma'am, na
Okay, noted.
ma'am.
Okay, noted. So may I ask, do you have any questions or clarifications? Sige na.
None, ma'am.
Palagi na.
Katong sa kuan, ma'am. Katong sa Felony, but ma'am, the classic ba ko with sa
O sige, unsa man. Okay, the difference between the two is that when you say felony, it is committed against. When you say felony, when you say felony, it is an act or omission that is committed against the revised penal code. any articles or titles of the revised penal code. But when you say offense, it is an act or omission. It could be an act. It could also be an omission, which is committed against the special law. Okay? Both the act, both the crime and both what's this? Both the felony and the offense, whether it's committed in a form of an act or whether it is committed in a form of an omission, ang generic term na nila tanan is crime. It's just that sometimes it's very important kung nga makabalo mo sa difference between a felony and an offense. Again, I will repeat, when you say felony committed against the revised penal code. But when you say offense, it is felony, it is committed against the revised penal code. But when you say offense, it is committed against the special law. Pareho ra ang offense ug ang felony, nga ang generic term nila is crime. Okay? So, lain-lain ang way pag-commit sa crime. It could be in a form of an act or it could be in a form of omission. Any other clarifications do you have?
Thank you, ma'am. Ako kung gitanong ko nang gi-type sa Word ba para ma-ano na ako.
Correct. Munang kamo ha, it's very important that every time we do have a discussion, pareho ra na sa panahon nga magklase mo nga kinalan, mag-take mo og side notes para whenever you make your review, it is easier for you. Okay? Alright.
Sa ma'am, sa dili ko ka apas ba?
Ay, paspas din ko mo istorya di ay?
Ambot sa awan, ma'am. Pero sa ko pasay paspasan ko, ma'am.
Okay. Sige. Sa sunod, maghinay na dyan ko pagmayo. Okay, Karen, how about you? Oracoy, Sumayang, Aguilar, Barrers, Bailiuan sa Banal. Do you have any question?
Wala, ma'am.
Lain kayo mo. Sige lang mong wala, ha?
Ilang tao ra niya na ako, ma'am, kung asa ko na wala.
Okay. So, naapay ni tawag nako nga ginikanan concerning sa yahang estudyante. I will need to take this first. Are you available at 1 p.m. karon? Kaning wala pa naka-take og oral?
Ma'am, batig mahurot na akong load.
Ma'am, wato magubkos ka, ma'am.
Wato ka ka? O, di mag-oral ka dire. So, ani na lang, sabuton na lang na to. Ano sa inyong gusto continuation sa oral kay kapaabot din kay istorya na ako sa phone.
Karon.
Ano sa gusto niyo i-continue ang oral? Si Barrera mo oral, si Bantayaw mo oral, kisa pa may lain diri gani?
Ako, ma'am.
Okay, si Aguilar po di ay.
Ako, ma'am.
Si Dayapin po.
Karon na lang, ma'am. Karon na lang.
Naapay ginikanan, matig-istorya na ako kabayan siyang anak.
Sige, ma'am.
Kamu ayaw pabuyag ha, matiaw po. Sige ha. Okay. So ano sa mata magpadayon og oral? Can we have it on Friday? Isagol ka mo sa uban?
Pwede po, ma'am.
Sige, ma'am.
Sige, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
Bantayaw?
Sige, mahurot na akong load.
Ay, mahurot na yung loads. Binigay ko, sige. Sige. So basta mo post na lamang ko ha within this week. Okay?
Sige, ma'am.
Okay. Just for in case
Okay,
inyong utok wala na sa klase, kay lami na kayong in November 1 o in November 2. So sa man, after na lang ta sa Halloween?
Pwede, ma'am.
Pwede, ma'am. Wala pa tali sa part 2, ma'am. Kaya di ka may gipanghilantan tanan. Balay.
Oo. In ana na ron, lahi ang kwano nila nat kay uton ko nila